Galactic arena crowds mocked human warriors, until one stepped into the ring. The news of humanity's acceptance into the Galactic Council spread across Earth faster than any previous announcement in human history. Within hours of the official vote, every news network on the planet was covering the story. Footage of Marcus's fight played on loop, analyzed by commentators who struggled to convey the magnitude of what had occurred. The images were brutal and difficult to watch. Many viewers saw a man being beaten nearly to death, but those who understood combat saw something different. They saw a human being demonstrate what their species had always been capable of when survival was on the line. In military academies across Earth, the recording became required viewing. Generals and strategists studied every exchange, every decision Marcus made, every moment where he chose to advance instead of retreat. The fight became a case study in asymmetric warfare, in psychological resilience, in the power of refusing to accept defeat even when defeat seemed inevitable. Young officers wrote dissertations analyzing the tactics Marcus had employed, the way he had turned his own fragility into a weapon by forcing his opponent to choose between victory and honor. But the impact went far beyond military circles. In hospitals, doctors showed the footage to patients recovering from severe injuries, using Marcus as an example of what the human body could endure. In schools, teachers used his story to illustrate lessons about perseverance and determination. In therapy sessions, counselors referenced his fight when working with people who felt overwhelmed by their circumstances. Marcus Chen became more than a fighter. He became a symbol of humanity's place in a universe that had tried to dismiss them. 6 months after the fight, Earth was transforming. The Galactic Council had opened trade routes that brought alien technology flowing into human space. Medical advances that would have taken centuries to develop on Earth were now available through collaboration with species who had been practicing advanced medicine for thousands of years. Energy systems, transportation technology, communication networks, all of it upgraded within months. Earth was catching up to galactic standards at a pace that shocked many council members who had assumed humans would need decades to modernize. But humans were not just receiving technology. They were contributing. Human engineers approached problems differently than other species, their shorter lifespans creating an urgency that led to innovative solutions. Human artists created works that fascinated alien audiences who had never encountered Earth's unique aesthetic traditions. Human philosophers raised questions that challenged assumptions other species had held for millennia. Most significantly, human soldiers began training with alien military forces, and the other species quickly realized that humans brought capabilities to combat that no one had anticipated. The Velkari, apex predators who prided themselves on their warrior culture, requested joint training exercises with human special forces. The first sessions were humbling for both sides. Velkari warriors were faster, stronger, and had reflexes that made them nearly impossible to surprise. But human soldiers demonstrated tactics that the Velkari had never encountered. Humans set traps, used deception, coordinated in ways that suggested a hive mind despite being individuals. And most disturbing to the Velkari, humans could operate effectively after injuries that should have incapacitated them. A Velkari commander named Shirkle, after watching a human squad complete a training mission despite 2 members having significant injuries, made a report that circulated throughout galactic military circles. Humans do not fight to win. They fight to not lose. This is a critical distinction. Most species calculate victory probability and surrender when those probabilities become unfavorable. Humans calculate survival probability and continue fighting as long as survival remains possible. The psychological impact on enemies cannot be overstated. How do you defeat an opponent who does not acknowledge defeat? Boxers, wrestlers, jiu-jitsu practitioners, judoka, karate masters, kung fu experts, Muay Thai fighters, savate specialists, and dozens of other styles. None of them won championships in the traditional weight classes. The physical disparities were too great. But in the persistent species classification, humans began to dominate. They understood endurance in ways other species did not. They had evolved for it. Marcus continued training fighters in his San Diego gym, but he also traveled extensively, visiting other human training centers, consulting with military units, speaking at events where people wanted to hear his perspective. He was uncomfortable with the celebrity status that had been forced upon him. He had not fought in the arena to become famous. He had fought because someone needed to show the galaxy that humans deserved respect. But he understood that his voice carried weight now, and he tried to use that weight responsibly. One evening, after a particularly long training session, Marcus sat in his office reviewing footage of upcoming alien fighters that his students might face. There was a knock on the door. He looked up to find Sarah Okonkwo standing there, still in her training gear, sweat staining her shirt. She had recovered fully from her injuries and had fought twice more in the Crucible, winning both matches against opponents from other persistent species. "Got a minute, coach?" she asked. Marcus gestured to a chair. Sarah sat down, and for a moment she just looked at him with an expression he could not quite read. Finally, she spoke. "I have been thinking about something. When I fought in the arena, I lasted 43 seconds. I thought I gave everything I had. I thought I fought as hard as anyone could fight. Then I watched you fight for 17 minutes with injuries that should have killed you. I have been trying to understand the difference. What did you have that I did not? You fought brilliantly. Fear is just information. Your body was trying to tell you that continuing was dangerous. My body told me the same thing. The difference is that I have spent 40 years learning to hear that information without obeying it. It is not about being tougher or braver. It is about understanding that your body has safety limits built in that are often more conservative than they need to be. Your body will tell you to stop long before you actually need to stop. Your injuries were catastrophic. You should not have been able to move, let alone fight. How did you override that? There is a point in that fight where my conscious mind basically shut off. I was operating on pure instinct, pure survival drive. The part of my brain that calculates whether continuing is worth it just stopped calculating. I became something simpler. Something that predates civilization and technology and all the things that make us think we are so advanced. I became an animal that did not want to die. People who go there too often, who tap into that survival drive too frequently, they do not come back right. You see it in soldiers with PTSD, in fighters who take too much damage, in anyone who pushes past their limits too many times. There is a cost. If I had stopped, if I had surrendered when my body was screaming at me to surrender, the galaxy would have confirmed everything they already believed about humans. We would have been the weak species, the prey species, the ones who need protection. Now we are the stubborn species, the dangerous species, the ones you do not want to fight because we do not know when to quit. That change was worth any cost. He thought about cost and consequences, about what humanity had gained and what it might lose. The galaxy now respected humans, but that respect came with expectations. Other species would test them, challenge them, try to find the limits of human endurance. And humans, being human, would probably push those limits further than was wise. A year after his fight with Krathix, Marcus received an unexpected visitor at his gym. It was advisor Tiketh herself, the Avari diplomat who had championed humanity's inclusion in the council. She arrived without ceremony, just another alien visitor in a city that was rapidly becoming accustomed to non-human residents. Marcus met her in his office, offering her water which she politely declined due to incompatible biology. "I wanted to thank you personally," Tiketh said, her translated voice carrying warmth. "My political career would have ended if humanity had failed in the Crucible. More importantly, I believed humans deserved a place in galactic civilization, and I could not prove it. You proved it for me. Before your fight, the story was that humans were too weak for galactic civilization. After your fight, the story became that humans are too stubborn to fail. Narrative matters in politics. It matters everywhere. You gave humanity a story that no one can dismiss. There are factions who believe humanity should be contained, limited, prevented from reaching their full potential. You won respect, but respect without trust can be more dangerous than contempt. Be careful how humanity uses the opportunities they have been given." "What should we do?" he asked. "What you have always done," Tiketh replied. "Survive, adapt, persist, but also learn wisdom. Stubbornness is a virtue when facing extinction. It becomes a flaw when dealing with allies. Humans must learn to surrender sometimes, to compromise, to accept that not every conflict requires fighting to the last breath. The galaxy needs your strength, but it also needs your wisdom. Humans had proven they could fight. Now they needed to prove they could do more than fight. The next generation of human ambassadors, scientists, traders, and explorers would need different skills than the ones he had demonstrated in the Crucible. They would need to show that humanity could build as persistently as they could battle. But Marcus also knew that his moment in the arena would not be forgotten. It would be referenced in history books, studied in classrooms, remembered whenever humans faced challenges that seemed insurmountable. He had given his species something invaluable, proof that humans belonged in the galaxy not despite their weaknesses, but because of what they could accomplish even with those weaknesses. Years later, when Marcus was in his 60s and finally retired from active training, he gave a speech at the graduation ceremony for Earth's first class of Galactic Council military officers. Young men and women who had trained alongside aliens, learned alien combat styles, prepared to serve in mixed-species military units that would patrol the vast territories of Council space. He told them about his fight with Krathix, but he focused on the moment that mattered most to him. "The galaxy expected me to quit," he said. "Every piece of data they had said I should quit. Logic said quitting was the smart choice. My own body was begging me to quit. But I did not quit, and that made all the difference. Not because I won. I did not really win that fight. Krathix surrendered, but we all know he could have killed me if he wanted to. I succeeded because I refused to make it easy. I made my opponent choose between victory and honor, and he chose honor. That is the lesson I want you to carry forward. Make it difficult. Make it costly. Make every opponent question whether defeating you is worth what it will cost them. Humans will not win every fight. But we can make sure that fighting us is always expensive. And sometimes, making it expensive is the same as winning."